is over.
That's right. And welcome, Misfits, to this episode of Call Me Skeptical Faith, where tonight we are opening up the internet phone lines to see if someone can help us understand why. Well, anyone would think faith is a possible pathway to truth. So come join.
Is it the right tool? Is it the right tool?
That's right. Is it like Grandpa, like The Rock, or like a good old hammer? So come join James W. and myself, Amy Newman, for some fun that's worth getting on your knees. Oh my.
She was already there anyway.
Woohoo! Sending love to the interwebs. I see everyone out there in chat like God equals the square root of 1, bubblegum gun. Shane Skywatcher, Brian Stevens, I, Soldier of Science, Foreign, Mark Reid. But I want to thank all of you really out there for joining us on the intertubes. And if you have recently been vaccinated or gotten your booster shot, now is the time to activate your George Soros 5G chip. Boop, boop, boop. Love it when it syncs up nicely.
Yeah. And then they'll be able to shapeshift into lizards, too.
That's right. Don't you want to be able to shapeshift into a lizard? And then you can get a fantastic shade of green. I like teal personally, but I'll go with green.
Yeah.
Though, I want to thank you all for joining us. And don't forget to like, follow, or subscribe. Because then you can hit that bell icon to get reminders to join our live streams. Hi,
hey guys.
Tubes. During the show, feel free to tag James W. or myself, Amy Newman, in chat with your thoughts, questions, and one-liners. Because that makes it easier for us to see your comment. Furthermore, we're a skeptic channel, including the two schmucks that you see before you.
Hey guys, hey black female atheist.
Woohoo! Some black female atheist. However, Call Me Skeptical is specifically looking for views that don't agree with our own. So if you fit the bill, then the link to join the show will soon head into chat and on screen. We also love people who do agree with us, so atheists, skeptics, and science-minded people feel free to rather call or click in. Oh my. Though if you think the world is 6,000 years old, that evolution is a hoax, or that the world is flat, well then, OG Willigers, you should speak to us right away.
What if they think the world is inside out?
That, I feel like it should be like a constantly turning world, maybe like a molten donut that's turning inside out on itself. Because I'm trying to think, if it was inside out, it would just become itself. It would just have a new crust, and that would just be the new... Or would it?
It would have to be 5-dimensional, so it's hard for us to perceive that in 3 spatial dimensions.
Got you. You see, now we are definitely using our brain. Of course, they never present their own theories, so everything we just talked about was a little bit more than they presented. Come on, guys. You can definitely show us a map. Or
Yeah, but
pictures. They just say
like,
composites.
like I said last time, what good would it be for them to do a model when us skeptics are just gonna pick it apart and show why it doesn't work and why the globe is still a better model? So they're not gonna waste their time doing that. They just gonna
Big globe,
yeah,
James. Big globe.
yeah, splurge
But
all over the
yes,
globe.
we are sending love because this housekeeping is sponsored by our Patreons. That can be found at patreon.com/Amy Newman, including awesome Patreons like Triggers the Abrahamic Religions, KO Champ, and hopefully Thor went for the head. Boom, boom, boom.
Gizmo triggers the Abrahamic religions too.
I can understand. Gizmo gives out a lot of good, I would say, witty retorts to theological claims. So it's always good.
Way more intelligent than what they're saying.
Than intelligent design. I love that word, even though it is so. It's just such a good marketing term. It basically is slowly trying to destroy our school system. If oh my lordy, at least any STEM subject that it can try and get its hand on. But nonetheless, creationists, theism doesn't do any damage, ladies and gentlemen. No reason to be an anti-theist. No. We're sending love to our theists, brothers and sisters, even if we think theism should, kind of be a little bit minimized.
It should go away eventually.
It should go away. And it shouldn't be via the gun. This is where they're always like, oh, you want to come to my door and hold a gun and tell me not to believe in God? Isn't this America? And insert whatever country that you're living in. No, we're fine with you living and being your fantastic religious theistic self. We just think that it is a superstition.
We disagree.
Yes, we disagree. Plus, we think it's kind of harmful. I used to believe in knocking on wood because I've never broken a bone. Doesn't work. Doesn't matter how many times you knock on the wood. Now, if a bunch of people...
Did you break a bone ever? Never?
I've never broken a bone. I've done a lot of crazy stuff. I even survived, not even in the car crash. I walked away from that thing just getting stitches in my eyebrow.
Oh, wow.
Which is crazy. Thank you. You could give thanks to God. It made me basically an advocate of seatbelts. That is what basically happened. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, kids, wear your seatbelt because it works. Now, eventually, people will say, "Oh, well, there's the one time in 185 million that their head got chopped off because it was around it."
It's like the vaccines. For every 1,000 lives they save, maybe one person has a severe reaction and dies, but it still does an overwhelming amount of good.
Yes, it basically. I don't know, the margins, I would say that very high 90 margins comparatively. Yeah. And a shout out to the random stranger, no idea who called 911 or whatever, that got me picked up. So thank you both, technology and humanity. Yeah. Humanity doesn't always come through, but it's a 50-50 shot. It was a good, so thank you, coin flip, and thank you, person. And sending love also to us from the Atheist Round Table.
Thanks, Oz.
Boom, boom, boom.
Hashtag faith is bullshit.
And that's right. Well, it is kind of spoilers, but we are a skeptic channel, so I guess it's no surprise to anyone that we are not big fans of the concept of faith. Nonetheless, I like to think like with everything, most things, we are open-minded. Open-minded, just haven't found a version of faith.
Curious.
Curious.
Faith curious.
Exactly.
Faithless curious.
The more we disagree with it, probably the more curious we are. But yes, not only are we sending love to Oz, but are you looking for better conversations? Are you looking for a better non-believer community? Well, ladies and gentlemen, we like to think we do it better. And that's why you should go to tart.live to look for tickets for better. Also, and I think there is a pre-production of a possible show that the Tang Gang and a bunch of other LGBT skeptics are going to be kind of doing a collaboration for a fun night out, which I always like to say is you just need to FUCUS, and you are just having a great weekend. Anyway,
right.
coming soon, hopefully not on my sheets, but anywhere else. No. But we are sending love and Tang Gang.
Love out the Tang.
That's right. We twist it up. I just like anything sugar flavored. And also anything connecting the atheist community. Because we don't have denominations, ladies and gentlemen. It is such a weight lifted off most of our backs.
There are a few people trying to fracture us, but overall,
every once in a while you get like the agnostic and atheist type, someone who wants to disagree about labels and try to put those two. But the vast majority of the non-believer community is an agnostic atheist. And if you are not, it doesn't really matter because it's more of an intellectual disagreement. And we basically...
Splitting hairs.
Splitting hairs because we get rid of a lot of ancient baggage. I am not saying there can't be any knowledge found in any religious text. I'm sure there have been good things that we have seen in our Bible study. It's
not much.
Yeah, you got to go mining, and it's through a lot of not nice stuff. Let's just say, for those of people eating, I'll save you. And sending love. Also.
Hopefully not eating quail. That would be bad.
Don't eat quail.
Don't eat quail.
I seriously need to make like a Bible.
That's got to be a merch item.
I mean, or a merch. Yeah, well, I would love that. So
don't eat the quail.
Both into a T-shirt, and I would love to just do. There are a bunch of lesser-known stories in the Bible that are just downright. I don't understand how Jews or Christians explain how this guy is. They call him all good. How about a little bit good? How about like holy moly?
They have faith that he's good, and that they will understand why he's good when they get to heaven, even if they don't understand now.
See, James, now you're using your brain.
He tells us he's a good God. We have faith in that. We don't understand why he does some of the things he does, but we will understand one day.
One day we'll understand. I also love, just another tangent, I love how he is the creator of all good, but evil is definitely our fault. Oh, thanks. I like where the credit shuffling goes there.
That's a deep philosophical question. You can't have light without darkness. You can't have good without evil. Did God create evil, or?
Well, honestly, if you even just take that a step back, it's God no matter what, because he made us. Like he's trying to shuffle it off on the things that he created. And it's like you create something, it goes out and it wrecks a bunch of havoc, and you're just like, ooh, whew, that's bad. Bad. Those people are effed. Someone should do something about that. What do you think, guys? Shouldn't someone do? It's terrible. I don't know who is to blame for this, but it is terrible.
Remember that angel Lucifer we created? Yeah, we'll blame him.
Oh, I love the retconning. I was thinking about him today too. Good old Lucy, who, kind of took a break in the Torah because he was just the serpent and just got thrown away somewhere to be a snake, and his punishment was to be fucking awesome and be a snake. But then, yes, you gotta eventually... I'm trying to think who is God's enemy in the Torah, and I can't help but think of anyone but us. It's the... but that gets boring. That gets boring after a while.
His enemy so far is the other gods, because the Torah seems to talk about them as if they're real people. And we haven't had any mention of the devil yet, except for a possible in Genesis. That's not clear from the text that it's the devil. But yeah, the other gods, he really hates them, and the people who worship other gods, even though his people do that sometimes.
Not to throw another skeptical loop in there, but we never see the other gods. I know they claim that the other gods are in there, but it'd be nice to be like a Yahweh versus another god. You kind of get a little bit of that when they fight against the Pharaoh and their magicians.
Yeah.
But he is a very jealous guy. He definitely name checks a lot of gods.
The people of Baal Peor, remember the people that, not only the other gods, but the people who worship them, other people. They're very, yeah.
Yes, well, he definitely doesn't like the Canaanites, even though I'm fairly sure the Shmishmalites came from the Canaanites.
Don't tell them that, though. Yeah.
Shh. Nonetheless, we love Ian Davenport!
Thanks, Ian, yes.
And love to Ian, who helps us level up as we've been talking once again against... It just seems like an organ that would naturally evolve. But hey, who are we? Except for people that understand the germ theory of disease, keyword theory. Woohoo! And also sending love to when we listen to all of these claims. It kind of makes us and a grumpy old cuss go bleep, 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 bleep. Because
it does.
They want to challenge us against genetics, and then we have to listen to the world is 6,000 years old, and I understand.
Yeah.
That they have to prove their religious claim. You have to do the gymnastics to get there. Nonetheless, can we just talk about the fact that eliminates basically 90% of all of our ancestors? Human ancestors.
Yeah.
People like you and me who walked, probably had some form of communication, walk, talk, and got shit done so that we could live. So that creationists could basically just blow them away. Blow them away. 100, maybe 200,000 years of humans. Homo sapiens, not some other species. I love other species, as you will come to see. That's not the point.
They came and they saw.
Well, it's just if you're gonna... you give such lip service to the people that came before you, your fathers and grandfathers. You say respect your elders and respect tradition, and all of this a metric of purity that I can almost understand on some human level, but then you're gonna wipe away all, I'm sorry, almost said all, 90% of the vast majority that came before us.
Yeah. Faith.
As Norm Macdonald would say, oh, the hypocrisy, that's the worst about it. But yes,
that's where faith takes you.
That is where faith seems to take us. It doesn't seem to take us into a lab, that's for sure. And a grumpy old customer. And we're sending love to 3 princesses in 1. Doom, 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 doom. And even though this is Disney, I just think of Sailor Moon for some reason. Sending love to Diana Smith.
Hey, Diana.
Woo-hoo! Because we kind of respect and value both genders, which you wouldn't know about if you read the Bible, the Quran, the Torah. You know, choose your holy text. It hasn't been that good for women. There are
maybe it'll get better. Maybe it gets better.
There are even denominations out there that will throw out scripture and stuff altogether. Just slap on things and be like,
we have the preacher out there.
Or even pro-LGBTQ, which is great, even though, you know, just don't look in Leviticus where it says, you know, you should be picking up old grandpa, old rock, and hurling it at your grandson or your granddaughter.
We got Perry in the house, Amy. Perry is trying to get your attention.
What is up, preacher? We're about to go to calls. So I'm sending love to all of our theist brothers and sisters out there. We are just going to be sending the link into chat. We will be giving priority to theists, in fact. Though, atheists, please, you're always welcome to join as well. Or whatever non-believer label that you choose, because we don't care, the non-believer community. We're just like, go get beer and bacon. And if you're a vegan, we're like, go be vegan. It's fantastic. You can live da 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 da. And we are also sending love to the resident archaeologist of the house. We are sending love to Pat Lowinger,
Pat,
who has done fantastic episodes with us, like an archaeological look at sacredness, where turns out that where many old religions have just moved into the previous religious structures of the time and just gave a new coat of paint. It was once a synagogue. We can make it a church, and then make it a mosque, and then eventually a museum. Nonetheless, we are sending love to Pat Lowinger as well. And we just have to send hearts now out there to both Biddy Buddha and Pat Lowinger, who are getting a fantastic show and channel out there on the interwebs. So go check that out as well. Woohoo! And also Tang.
Pat and Biddy, yeah. And we got Randolph. Hey, Randolph. Randolph out there.
Randolph. Oh, the Godfather is here. So we're sending love to all of the skeptics out there. We're sending love to Pat. We're also looking for, as well as Dale, we're just looking for a little bit of empirical evidence.
A little bit.
Really what we're looking for. The funny thing is, they always ask us what would make us believe. And then when we actually give the answer, we generally get excuses for, why the big G-Man can't come down here. Not the G-Man on YouTube, of course, because he's out there winning every debate. That's something different.
Yeah.
But we're sending love to Dale Pastel as we just look for, once again, empirical evidence over, I would say, the main topic of tonight, which is faith. And we kind of, we couldn't help ourselves. Dave Garr knows, the skeptics know sometimes. We can't help ourselves.
Brian Stevens knows. He knows.
The world just, she looks, and oh my, am I going to pronoun? She looks a little round.
Hey, Roger. She is a little round, yeah.
She is a little round.
Yeah.
That beautiful pale blue dot. There's a NASA live stream, ladies and gentlemen. Do you know how long it would take to generate, to render perfect consistently, constantly? They just have no idea. They really have no idea how the post-production industry works. That's really, or the history of post, or how a render farm works, or anything. Jesus. I said love, though, if you believe.
What do they know?
They think that they're skeptics. That is the lovely irony that comes from that thing. Can you trust the government? Can you trust them? Look, I am not a big fan of institutions. I am not a big fan of. I feel as apolitical as it comes, and yet at a certain level, it's just us, folks. If you're going to be afraid of us, and I don't know what to say, go vote. I know it's cheesy, but if you want better people, if you want more trustworthy people, and your country is under the 50% vote, trying to think, not really registration.
Calm down, preacher.
Then you should just do it. That really is. You got to get better. But you're not going to change it. NASA they're just trying to do good things. My final shill. I mean, just things like that, and things like SETI, where we're just trying to find life in the universe. These are really the people who. It's funny that they say make a lot of money, but generally these are the scientists who had to sink a lot of time, energy, and friggin' a lot of loans. Thank you, this system, to actually go out and dedicate themselves and try to look for life outside the universe. But they could be shilling for George Soros. It all comes back to full circle, ladies and gentlemen. It could be. But we like around Earth and Dave Garr.
Religion seems to be more profitable anyway. At least
Oh, James, that is the funniest thing. Once again, global warming, and I even hate the term. The Earth is getting warmer. And the people who believe this and are telling you this are not making good money, okay? You know who the people who are making good money? There is a narrative. All the language that they use, it drives me crazy. There is a narrative. There is a group, a small group of people conspiring to push a narrative for you to think the Earth is not getting warmer. They're called oil companies. I think they see the heyday with people like Elon Musk and people that are just going to out-technology them and out-market them. It's going to have nothing to do with fifis. As much as I wish it would. It's not going to be about saving the whales. They're just going to be, because we just burn dead things from the ground. Aliens would laugh at us, and but we're sending love. We're way smarter than the other animals. We went to the moon. Okay, we went to the moon. Oh, did you? Have you went to the moon? We went once. Thank you. We're trying to conquer low Earth orbit. At least some of us. But we're sending love to the lead hyena. We're sending love to Dave Gar and the lead hyena of the pack, Scott Duke, because then we have dominion among the other animals because we're so smart. So smart.
Oh, God gave it to us. We're going to take care of them all. He doesn't want to.
Yeah, exactly. He's just going to take care of us all. Just let Jesus take the wheel, ladies and gentlemen. And listen, I am proud to actually use that word of many of the accomplishments that humans have done. I don't even, not only do I not want to diminish it, I appreciate it. But you then can't turn around and then shit on it because it takes all of us. It really, we are standing on the shoulders of giants, and almost
giants
like it
from
took,
the Bible.
Yeah, almost like it took 100,000 years to get here. But we went to the moon. Yes, we did. Can we go back? Well, that's another
One day,
story.
maybe.
One day, maybe, exactly. But they don't focus on that. When you bring that up, actually, they generally become, they're like, why should we even pay for that? Now, nonetheless, we should pay for other things. We shouldn't forget the people on Earth.
Yeah. The money would be much better spent by letting the oil companies have it and do their stock buybacks and, you know.
And so it has to be both. We have to be thinking of the present while moving into the future. You have to be able to do both. Because you gotta, what's funny, a word that I would say have hope. I like the word sometimes. Sometimes a religious context kind of ruins it, which is what I'll get to in a minute. But I would just say I like to be cautiously optimistic because we are heading in the right direction. If you look at a lot of the statistics, less war, less, almost every general statistic that we in a modern country, it's going in the right direction.
You less people in churches.
Like,
wonder if there's a correlation there.
Speaking of our Bible study and the fabulous Reid, woohoo, where we sometimes get a little thespian, as the Bible does, because it says,
"Oh, come on, preacher! She'll get you on in a minute."
I think we're almost.
Preacher's getting testy, Amy.
Well, what can I say? I'm drunk. I am not. I am a social drinker, though I do love a Long Island iced tea. A Long Island iced tea is what you need to get because it's the, I was going to say quickest, which it is, but if you really, I hate to say,
you want to get hammered.
Yeah, if you want to get hammered, and I mean, if you only got $10 on you or lower, go for a Long Island iced tea.
Vodka, gin, rum, tequila. It's got everything in it. Whiskey. A splash of Coke.
I forget which joke. I'm going to see. It's like I used to think that iced tea was iced tea with liquor in it. What I learned is that it's liquor with liquor in it. Do, 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 do. But also sent in love to Reid Jones.
Reid Jones, yeah.
And last, but certainly not least, we are sending love to Rachel.
Rachel.
I'm not going to get copyrighted anymore. Blurb. Sending love to the YouTube gods, which seem to be more physical. No, we're sending love to everyone out there on the YouTubes and the
Computer algorithm is God.
interwebs. That's right. The computer algorithms gods. Thank you to all of our Patreons. You are who enable us to make all of this fun content, along with our mods, and of course, viewers like you. So before we switch into callers,
Oh shit.
dudunt, dudunt, dunt. Yeah. Faith tends to have two in-use definitions. In a colloquial sense, when someone asks you to have faith in them, they mean a sense of trust, hope, or confidence. Someone may ask on board a ship, do you have faith in your captain? Plus, under investigation, we can normally find out why. Maybe the captain saved a crewmate's life, steered through tough waters, and brought the crew back home safe. However, no supernatural shenanigans sneaks in here. That's because the theological definition of faith takes a turn to the Twilight Zone. Since we must now have some level of confidence in a being playing cosmic hide and go seek. A being who was just fine, showing all sorts of physical evidence thousands of years ago, but who has since dissipated with each new technology made able to record them. In fact, there seems to come a proudness from believing without evidence. Don't take my word for it. Instead, take, for example, Hebrews 11 in the New Testament. Now, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen, which sounds what like you'd say to the last people on the Titanic when you know that bitch be going down. The substance of things hoped for? Like winning a lottery ticket, maybe? Well, worse, since we can verify people actually winning the lottery. And of the evidence of things not seen? Now, there's the clear rub. God needs you to believe on poor evidence. Which is because faith is not a pathway to truth. Doesn't matter what flavor of religion it comes from, faith ultimately is not an accurate measuring stick by which we can determine any claim. Now, some sophisticated religious theologians will say, well, I don't believe on blind faith. However, I'm not sure how to tell the difference between regular faith and those that need special parking. That's because if we had evidence for any of these religious doctrines, we wouldn't need faith. Rather, the claims made by believers would hold up to scrutiny and empirical testing, which means we're right back where we began. Faith. What is it good for? Nothing.
Absolutely
In fact,
nothing. Oh, faith.
What it is so good for. In fact, the colloquial definition is sometimes used as a shield against the theological one. Sure, it's fine to trust, have confidence, and believe in your partner based on personal experience. Experience, by the way, that happens in the natural, physical world. Faith, from a religious perspective, is bullshit. A meter by which anyone's own intuitions can speak about powers outside this universe and then build claims a mile high which cannot be verified. Thanks, but I'll pass. Woohoo! And all right, what do you think, James? We having a faithless good time?
As always, as we often do, as we are wont to do. So I mean, like faith would be like just opening up your email one day and you see an email from a Nigerian prince and you just say, you know what? I am just going to believe this is true. I'm going to follow through with it. I'm going to send the $6,000 and then I'm going to get the check for $10 million. I'm just going to have faith in that. And if you want to do that, you're welcome to do that. But I don't think anybody's going to think it's a good idea. And like Amy pointed out, isn't it funny that faith is like the one thing that God wants most? It's like the most actually important thing to him is that you don't have the evidence, but you believe anyway. And that's what I define faith as. He wants you to arbitrarily choose to believe in him, even though he intentionally refuses to provide evidence. And as Amy said, he wasn't always this shy about providing evidence. He did provide lots of evidence in the past, overwhelming, undeniable evidence in the past. But he doesn't want to do any of that today. In fact, he refuses to openly communicate with us in any way. Only thing we have from him is an old book that we can ascertain his will and what he wants us to do and how we're going to live our lives and where we're going to go forever. And doesn't that just strike you a little odd? Kind of like the man behind the curtain in The Wizard of Oz. Like, don't look behind the curtain because there's nobody there. Well, there's not a God there. You're going to find people there. You're going to find people writing books because people do write books. And you're going to find people wanting to exercise control over people. You're going to find people wanting to structure society in a way that they want. And you're going to find people saying that the way they want to do things is the way God wants to do things. You can't question God. But if you do what God says in here, God will be very happy with you. If you follow his word, he will be very, very happy with you. It's a good thing that you follow that. The problem is that there are people who do really good things and bad stuff happens to them. And there are people who are total assholes and they get the world. They get it all. They get everything. Total assholes. There's no sense of justice. There's no sense of cosmic good. Good doesn't always necessarily win out in the end. Bad people do bad things and they get ahead. Good people do good things and sometimes they don't get ahead. And that's what you would expect from a universe that's not guided. There's nobody watching over us to make sure good wins out in the end. We're the only ones who are able to do anything like that because we're the only ones who exist that we know of. So what had to happen after that? Because, well, why would you follow it? Because, hey, you might not follow it and good stuff would still happen to you. You might follow it to the letter and bad stuff happens to you. Well, here we move on to another level. We get to another level of the pyramid. We get to a darker level, and this is where they realized that they needed a threat. They needed a threat so horrible, so terrible, so diabolical that no one would really ever want to risk it. And they hung their hat on the fact that we don't know what happens when you die because nobody's ever been dead, really dead, and come back. We have no evidence to think that consciousness lives on. There's nothing that indicates that, but we don't know. And they came up with an idea that says, if you believe in God, you'll get it all. But you don't get it now. You get it after you die. But if you walk away from God, you will suffer forever. You will be tortured forever. So even if there's only a 1 out of a trillion chance that it's true, you better keep believing because what if you're wrong? What if you're wrong? You know, we hear theists, we hear Christians mostly, they tell us that you don't know, that you have to assume things on faith. You have faith too. Your worldview has faith in it because you have to assume certain brute facts about reality that you can't absolutely prove. And it is true to a certain extent. There are actually not a lot of things we know about reality with absolute certainty. There are certain core assumptions we just have to make because you can't prove them. And we do make those, and we function okay in spite of those, making those assumptions, because those are the ones that we have to make. You make the minimum number of assumptions that you have to make to be able to function. Occam's razor. And God is not a minimum assumption. He is a huge, complicated, gargantuan thing that you are bringing into reality that we don't need in reality. You're bringing in not only a God, you're bringing in a whole religious system that doesn't make sense. You're saying, well, we're just not smart enough to understand the genius of it, but we will understand one day. And the Bible, it sets all this up. It sets all this up because they kind of knew, like, hey, I mean, we're writing about evidence in here. We're writing about seeing all these miracles, and people in the future, they're not going to have this because we never had it. We just made it up. Say, well, wouldn't you know that the Bible, Jesus himself says that the people that were with him, they believed because they saw, but how much greater will the rewards be for those who believed without having seen? So yeah, you're not getting evidence right now, but that's to your benefit because your reward will be so much greater because you still believed anyway. And if you're wrong, oh, hey, what have you lost? Pascal's wager. You didn't lose all that much if you're wrong. You gain the world if you're right. And we know that's a bad argument. I don't think it's a good argument. I don't think it's very convincing to skeptics anyway. It probably is one of the better arguments that holds people in religion, this pernicious fear of hell. And we do know that there are great atheist friends that we've had come on this stream who have had lots of problems with that in their deconversion, that have actually came on and said they needed to go to therapy. It took them so much to get over that fear of hell that religion has drilled into their mind. And I think we all, at least those of us who did believe in hell at one point, we all had to round that corner at some point. We all had to get over that fear. And some of us did it with greater difficulty than others, but it is part of the mountain that you have to climb. You have to get over that fear. And fear is no way to live your life. Fear can be one of the most destructive things. Isn't it funny that we're told in the Bible that the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom? He wants you to be afraid of him. He loves you, but he wants you to be afraid of him. But he's not even willing to provide evidence for you that he exists, at least any evidence that's willing to convince anybody with a reasonable standard of credulity. And that's why you're told in there to believe it with childlike faith. Just believe it because you heard it, and there you go. Believe the email because it's in your email box, and you're just going to choose to believe it and see what happens. But I don't think it's a reliable pathway to truth. Thank you. Newman? Fuck us.
Woohoo! Thank you so very much, James. And with that, fuck us. Fucus. What does that spell? We are about to switch into callers, at which we'll be taking one call at a time. We are looking for those with viewpoints different than our own. In fact, we'll give priority to those who do. However, we're also open to views who do agree with us and have something to say on the subject. Afterwards, we will be heading into the Discord for some chatting with the community, the link of which is in the description
Internet
below.
memes.
Internet memes. And feel free to tag James W. and myself at Amy Newman in chat for your comment, question, or one-liner to be read on screen. And so with that, we are going to be switching into our first caller with Soldier of Science. Woo-hoo! And I am also sending the link out there, and I'm going to pin it. So if you would like to join us, that's right, baby. We got Soldier of Science and Jefferson Spatchcock behind stage. We are moving into our first caller here on Call Me Skeptical.
Hey, Soldier.
Hey, guys. Thanks for letting me join. Glad you didn't ban me after our last conversation. That was pretty cool. But yeah. And
also, I just want to say I saw Jefferson drop off. I wanted to know. I keep on forgetting if he is an atheist or a theist.
I believe he's an atheist. Yeah,
he's an atheist. Oh, he came back on. Okay, then this is the right order because we do want to give priority to people who disagree.
The theists.
We can't help ourselves. But all right, with that, Soldier.
In terms of welcome back, Soldier. I don't think we were mad at you. We're not a political channel, but we're not a political channel. We try to stay away from that as much as possible.
It was interesting, but no, I think faith is a great topic, and the reason I say that is because I think in the United States, especially, we grew up, we really think if you say someone is a person of faith, that's kind of like a blanket terminology for here is this person's moral value and they must be a good person.
It's a virtue. It's looked at as a virtue. There,
it's looked at as it's exactly. It's a virtue, and we grew up thinking that we actually put faith or a person of faith kind of on the same pedestal as any elite person, right? Like a person of faith is as
assumed to be moral.
They're assumed to be moral, trustworthy.
They wouldn't steal. They wouldn't
exactly
touch children inappropriately. They wouldn't do any.
Exactly.
They wouldn't lie. Right.
All of which is untrue.
Especially in the United
All
States.
things of which are untrue. And I would even go further in when you really question someone who is a person of faith, if you question them and say, hey, do you respect else's faith in America? That is also a virtue for us, right? Like, you can be a Christian, but you also respect a person who's
Right.
Islamic or a person of a, and it's automatic for us to just not question the truth of it and say, you know what, since they have faith, that's valid, and it doesn't matter if it's true or not. It's valid. We literally put that word on such a pedestal instead of going, you know what, maybe faith is just the only attribute for faith is gullibility. It's the only attribute that you need for faith is gullibility. It's the only attribute you need for faith is, you know what, someone told me that this is true and I'm going to believe it. That's it.
I read it in an old book, therefore
That's it.
I'm going to choose to believe
A
it.
book said a thing.
But our Constitution literally makes it so that we cannot criticize people of faith for fear of being bigot. It's true. Like can't criticize. I can't criticize the Islam faith because I'll be Islamophobic, right? And I can't criticize Christianity.
You're treading into the water of politics. You're getting a little closer.
Because
I'm trying not to, but
we can if I could just say, because this channel specifically, we go after any. I would almost say you're using a third definition of faith, which is just, and which I agree is used, which is just colloquially you say they're the Islamic faith, they're the Jewish faith, they're the Christian faith.
Christian faith.
I would say, and this channel supports going after superstition, no matter what the label. My problem, maybe trying to think how to see, I'm already trying to wrap bows, because it's just like me with Judaism. You know, I love Jewish people. I love my parents. I love my family. They're good people. Nonetheless, I think Yahweh is a dick. And so
there are lots of good people that are theists, and that doesn't diminish their goodness as people, and we should judge them based on how they treat other people, how they live their lives, regardless of whether they have a superstitious belief.
I guess what I'm saying is, as atheists, we all of a sudden knock down the word faith to meaning like, hey, you know what, you wouldn't use faith if you had evidence. You would use maybe the word trust. I guess you would use the word trust.
Right.
I trust that this is going to happen because I've had past experience. I've had evidence this is happen. The only that you typically use the word faith is when it has to deal with your religion, and in America, not getting into politics, James, getting into politics.
I get you.
It's just a word that we put on such a pedestal, and we automatically dismiss it. Maybe in the back of our mind, we go, you know what, that religion that we don't agree with, it's the wrong religion. But as far as me being an American and respecting all faiths, we put it on that pedestal. We put it on, you know what, I might disagree with it, but I'm not going to knock it because that person has faith. And therefore it's more important that they have faith than being an atheist, for example,
Right. Well, like what you said before, where you said that faith in your mind was gullibility, and nobody really wants to be labeled as gullible. And the fact is that we are, as atheists, we're still in the minority. So the majority of people do claim to be a religion. So they're naturally going to not want to think of themselves as being very gullible. So they're going to look at other people of faith positively because they share that bond with them. I have this this belief in things that I can't absolutely prove, that I don't have good evidence for. I just believe it. They also have a slightly different set of beliefs, but they have similar. They can't prove it, but they believe it on faith. So they have that kind of bond. Whereas we have to be the assholes over to the side saying we
Exactly.
don't have any evidence. We should not. We should withhold belief because there hasn't been sufficient evidence presented. You know.
Exactly. That's what I was trying to say in a nutshell. And one last thing. So I don't know if you guys have been following, but there's a binary star system that's going to explode into a supernova next year, 2022, and it's going to be visible for everybody in the northern hemisphere. It's going to be probably the brightest thing in the sky outside of the North Star. So my question is that the end of the flat Earth system?
No.
if we could
I
predict
wish.
if we can predict that a once in 10,000 years event is going to happen next year,
No.
with a supernova in the sky, can flat Earth say anything about that?
No.
I
See,
wish.
they have a remarkable ability to just since they don't put models out, they can just yeah.
Yeah, but how do you
NASA faked it.
how do you explain exactly? How do you explain away though? Like, you know what? Next year we're predicting there's going to be a supernova in the sky. It's going to be red. It's going to be as bright as the North Star. You're going to be able to see 8 months in the northern hemisphere. If
And
that happens,
also,
yeah,
well, no, if
Science, yeah.
there is enough flat earthers that if they really wanted to, they should have been able to put money together, get sponsors, get a rocket, and get your ass up into space. I know there's like one dude who tried, and unfortunately, natural selection took its course.
that's
Sending
right.
love
That's right.
to their family,
I
but
don't think he was really a flat earther though. Like later on, it showed that guy was probably not
well,
really truly a flat earther.
nonetheless,
Yeah.
you need to, in science, you need to frig around and find out, and none of the, or very few of the people that push creationism that I have seen have ever put forth work of their own. It is always just stuff that they mine quote from the 70s and 80s.
Trying to pick apart the work modern science, just poke holes here or there in what they don't understand about the theories.
And they don't understand that trying to disprove another model does not prove their model. Like, it's great.
Yeah.
You should, in the peer review process, try to find evidence, because disprove is kind of mathy, but you should try to find evidence in the other direction instead of just taking pot shots at what you don't believe in.
Yeah, I mean, if any one of them spent a good 2 hours just following the Cassini missions or the Voyager mission, you think that would be enough? You think that would be enough to just?
I mean, we get people who don't believe in evolution. I mean, these are.
Speaking of which, I'm giving a shout out. I know they were here basically during the house cleaning,
Bubble.
and now they seem to have gone bye-bye. Both Bubble and I imagine Perry doesn't believe in evolution. So either one of those two gentlemen, they seemed excited. I wish they would have come on, because it's going to be, it looks like we're about to bring on another atheist, but we're looking for theists. We're, as much as we love our atheist brothers and sisters.
Come on, theists.
Come on in with your dipstick.
The water's fine. But yeah, any last thoughts, Soldier of Science?
No, I think mainly my point was about faith and just how we elevate it and we blanket it. Like when we grow up, we just really look at people of faith and go, you know what?
We make it a virtue.
We make it a virtue. We go, you know what? Faith is such an important word, and this person must be an important figure in our society. But it's a dude who studied a freaking fictitious properties. Like, come on. I mean, do we get much emphasis to the dude who studied the, Lord of the Rings trilogy? I mean, that guy just solid,
I wish we did.
because he knows every aspect of the Lord of the Rings. I mean, he must be really great because he
Well,
about
and
the
it
Lord of
would
the
be
Rings.
like they give us claims that, maybe speaking of Islam, the claim of memorization is a fairly
Memorizing the Quran. Yeah.
new apologetic that I'm starting to come across. And
Yeah,
memorization of something has nothing to do with understanding the context. You could memorize the Lord of the Rings. You could memorize Lord of the Rings in a language you don't understand, or the Bible in a language you don't
oh yeah.
understand. I mean, just
You can
like
make up your own
Latin.
language.
People do that in Arabic for the Quran, right? I
Oh,
mean, they
I
sing
hate
it.
that claim.
Yeah.
That's another apologetic that if the God, I'm not saying it should be in English. In fact, if it's in English, that's also kind of silly. Like if it came
Yeah.
down and it was like, but in fact, I would imagine, and maybe this is just my small 3D mind, but I'd imagine it would be like this Rosetta Stone thingy. It would be translating itself. There'd be all these
Translating.
different. Look, I just want to transition
No,
into as many transitionary statements as I can transition my way into.
I get it.
Nonetheless,
I'm just saying. I'm just saying that a person who can perfectly recite the Quran from beginning to end in Arabic, they are given more emphasis. They are looked higher
sure.
upon if they do it more perfect. And
It's
again,
just
you're
a
saying
weird.
memorization.
It's a weird test.
Yep.
Yeah.
That just like in a lot of theistic circles, especially the Abrahamic, though I guess it's really almost the majority of the religions I can think of, even Hindu and scripture, is that the older it is, the more it gets this the secret sauce. And yet that's backwards to me in science. The newer a reference is, the more, I wouldn't say useful, but the more up to date, the more relevant
Yep.
by its nature.
So
And all right.
I know Rand.
Thank you.
I was gonna say Randall. Randall was on a prior video with me, and he saw me like talking about Jehovah's Witness, who has been calling me over the past couple weeks, probably because they can't visit people door to door on COVID. And one of the things I said to the Jehovah's Witness was like, "You obviously don't trust modern politicians, do you?" And she was like, "Absolutely not." And I said, do you trust science, like, with the things going on with vaccines and so forth? She was like, absolutely not. And I said, so don't you find it strange that you don't accept modern politicians, modern teachers, modern scientists, but you would accept the canonization of a Roman government over thousands of years ago when you know a thousandth more times scientific knowledge than those guys did? Don't you find that weird? Don't you find it weird you would accept that? And she was just like,
Reverence to the old.
yeah,
And I don't want to shit
well,
on our
it was
ancestors. In
inspired.
fact, I
It was
think they
inspired by God.
piss on our ancestors often, whether they know they're doing so or not, especially if you've been brought up that the world is always 6,000 years old. You may not know that you are actually shitting on your ancestors when you eliminate the vast majority of them. Because if you don't know any better. But yes, faith.
Thank you, soldier.
What
Yeah.
is it good
Thank you.
for? And it shouldn't be given any more respect than any other group. I'm fine with having groups. Go play bingo. Just don't try to make it. Well, they apparently they're 503c. They are tax free, so they
501c3.
get
Yeah.
to so they get to print money. But that's a whole other
What
story.
about the $600,000 they found hidden in behind a wall in Joel Osteen's church.
Really?
Yeah,
Jeez.
a plumber. I guess money had been stolen a while ago. Somebody stashed it behind a wall. I guess he was going to come back for it eventually, but
I mean, it sounds like he's trying to be. That's what a super spy or an evil villain does.
yeah.
So, Joel Osteen, which one of you are you trying to be here? But all right, we are looking for more people to join us on Call Me Skeptical Faith. Thank you so very much, Soldier.
Thanks, Soldier.
Thank
You get in shit.
Mm-hmm. And I'll say right before we're going to read a comment, and I'll just bounce off what Sun Soldier said. You know, it's a good way to make wealth a judge, is you find Jesus.
What's that? What do you mean, make wealth a judge?
It's a good, looks good on a record, especially on
Oh,
America,
right.
to find Jesus right before you go to your hearing, which shouldn't be, you know, which atheists are just not looked well on in this country. I think that's going to change because it just seems like this is my human bias, but atheists, agnostic, non-believers, we are so comfy in the online world. We have just found a lovely little home here. And I think that's going to continue as we become a internet-based society. So it's our turf, baby.
Well, I mean, if you think about specifically about the prison system and about the justice system, we actually used to have lots of decent job programs and training programs, educational programs. But they found out, well, actually, if we let the billionaires just keep their money and we cut those programs out, that'll save us money. And instead of having those programs, we could just send in pastors into the prisons that'll tell the inmates, oh, it makes Jesus sad when you steal. And then they won't steal when they get out. And what happened? They got out of jail. They had the same problem, so they ended up getting locked back up, and we had a huge explosion in the incarceration rates. And yeah.
Yep. No, we have to change the motivation behind our prison system. I understand
More
that
Jesus. Yeah, no good.
it sounds counterintuitive to many people who are looking for, I don't want to say vengeance,
Retribution.
maybe a little bit, retribution, but non-mercy options when you don't retrain, when you don't give people skills other than sending them to prison, what you end up doing is making really good criminals. You end up making career prisoners that live in a system where they need to pretend to be tough at all times. It is basically like you're living in the apocalypse. And
right.
I mean, what do you think that's going to pump out? So if your goal is to make the worst living conditions ever because that they deserve it because they did something wrong, those are the people you're going to get out.
And that'll motivate them not to want to come back, but it doesn't really.
Well, that's what, and I love that
effective.
line. Yeah, I know it's like if you shoot people in the head, that'll tell. But all that does is create a fear-driven, terrorized society. And look, there are bad human beings out there. I understand the world is not lollipops and rainbows as much as I want to taste the rainbow.
There's some irredeemable people.
There are some people we need to separate from society.
They're too dangerous. They're irredeemable.
But if that's how we look at change. Exactly. But if that's how we look at the majority of prisoners, then that's you're just going to pump out career criminals. There's no other way to say it. That's what you're creating.
Well, I think what makes it so hard today is that it's so hard for them to come out and get a fresh start because that record follows. It's not like it was 50 years ago. You could move to a new state, a new town, nobody who knew you were, you could get a fresh start. Now everywhere you go, that's going to follow you, and
Absolutely.
you're going to have to get the worst jobs, the worst. It just makes that returning to that crime so much more appealing because the system is so punitive. There's no real incentive to change for most of them. So
the only incentive they give is people will be afraid from how terrible it is. But what just happens is a bunch of schmucks end up doing bad things, and then now you've created a terrible cycle of life.
The incentive is not to get caught, is what it comes down to. Yeah.
But we're gonna
do the crime, don't get caught.
do another comment, and
bring in
we got
Jefferson.
a few comments, and then we're gonna bring in Jefferson. But we're looking for non-believers. We're looking for theists to talk about faith. Yes. What I think is happening is I just don't think faith is a concept that can be defended, James. That's what I actually think it is.
It's hard.
Yeah, that must be. So they're just going to have to prove otherwise. Pat, our lovely resident archaeologist, says, I heart studying religious peoples and traditions. I am currently writing a chapter on early Christian martyrs buried along the lower Danabin limes. I just want to pretend that says the lower Dan, just because my brain. Got to love those dead corpses. Absolutely. Well, I find exactly Dave Rubin. For better or for worse, I've found that many non-believers read more religious texts and read more in them too than their theistic counterparts. I think there are multiple reasons for that, actually. But
absolutely.
But hey, I am all for learning about other religions. In fact, I am all for learning about all of them. Because
you're gonna find they're all bullshit.
Exactly. I'm not leaning towards any of them. I have a bone to pick with almost all of them. Even as innocuous as deism is, I still think it's bullshit, because you're just telling me that you believe in something that cannot be verified. Fantastic. I mean, the least harmful, and yet still
a super form of superstition.
Yeah, exactly. That word specifically. Republican Jesus, from Pat again, came down, oh my, to earth and took form of a day laborer. Likely spoke in Aramaic rather than Hebrew, and all of the earliest texts were in Greek or Latin. English much? I know, exactly. The Bible definitely, the Torah and the Gospel definitely did not come handed down in English. And that both creates problems, but is also what we would expect from a human language that has to be translated.
Yeah.
Looking, and all right, keep on sending in those comments to James W. and myself and Amy Newman. But with that, we are bringing in Jefferson Spatchcock. Woohoo!
Hey, Jefferson.
In our Call Me Skeptical. What is up, Jefferson? I hope you are doing well tonight. We are calling Me Skeptical on faith. I don't know where the theists are. I think they got cold feet. But I hope you're doing well. And what are your thoughts?
I am doing well, thanks. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I am an atheist, but I did want to present a point that I think pushed back a little bit on some of the stuff that you presented about faith. I think there's a tendency, I think, amongst a lot of atheists to have kind of a jaundiced idea of what faith is because of what especially in the United States, mainstream Christianity pushes, of faith as a kind of a normative thing. You need to have faith in God. You need to believe in God. This kind of thing. They're very. I think they're generally pretty poor at describing how that's supposed to work. But there is a different way of thinking about faith in terms of the Gospels, the stories, whether you care about it or not. And one of them is that salvation by faith alone is not based on our faith or our conviction or our willingness to believe it or whether we're convinced it's the truth. It's based on God's faith, right? Christ's faith, right? God died for people, and that faith reconciled, God's creation with himself. And so the
The funny
problem with
thing.
that notion of faith is that it leads to a lot of universalist kind of claims where God sort of settles the issue that he's had with human beings for a long time. And then that faith, the faith that's demonstrated by himself as a man, suffering and living amongst humans and then suffering and then dying for their sins and then being resurrected and ministering to them again, that doesn't really work for a lot of Christians because it makes the faith less exclusive, right? You end up getting this kind of weird, almost universalist kind of faith where, salvation by faith alone, not human faith, but God's faith. And if God's faith is the faith that we're talking about, well, then everybody's saved. Well, if you're into kind of an exclusionary club, you need to check that. You have to wrap that up because that's not going to
Sure.
work. So faith ends up getting converted into this notion of no. Faith needs to be about whether or not you're convinced of certain prepositions. And so I think it's important to think about that, not only as atheists but and skeptics, but I think Christians should also think about that too, because there's a tendency amongst Christians to think that they have a monopoly on this kind of idea about faith when they're talking about the idea of preaching faith and forgiveness from especially from the New Testament. Peter's take on the idea of repentance was people repenting for the fact that Jesus was not recognized for the prophet that he was and the Messiah that he was, and then killed. Right? That was the thing that we were supposed to repent for. We didn't recognize that he was the one and true one, and that humanity had him killed. That ended up getting converted into Christianity. Is you need to repent for the individual sins that you have done, right? Most Christians don't think about that in terms of that. Paul doesn't talk about that. Paul ends up talking about you need to believe God in order to accept his hierarchy, his authority, and then you will be resurrected in bodily perfection and you'll join him in heaven, right? There's lots of different types of Christologies, lots of different types of soteriologies, and lots of different takes on faith. But I think if faith is really as important as a lot of Christians believe, if faith is pivoted so that faith is based, it's not human faith in God, but God's faith in man, motivating Christ's salvation, Christ's death and resurrection to save us from sin, that totally changes the salvation story, and it completely changes what Christianity means, and it could totally change their gospel and their message. Will they accept it? No, because then it's all inclusive.
And can I just ask, are you just trying to say there's different versions of faith, or because you used the word God's faith a lot? I have no idea what God's faith is.
Well, in terms of his
God's faith in
faithfulness, right?
man, I
Like
guess.
like
Oh yeah.
theological claims about God's faithfulness are based on his trustworthiness, right? His despite his disagreements with the Israelites, right, throughout the stories of the Old Testament, God remained faithful to the Israelites, right? He provided them a path. He provided them some kind of a solution or whatever, and then
Also
finally
killed many of them and
he
tortured
did.
many of them.
He did. But when it comes to the New Testament, right, and there's a new covenant on the line, God's faithfulness provides for the salvation through his son, Jesus Christ, et cetera, et cetera. So an
But
argument
what's
can
the
be made
faith?
for
That's what
faith.
I am trying to figure out. You said God's faith. What is like faith in this definition? What is it trust? Is it
It's
confidence? Belief
it's
without
a
evidence?
it's a dedication to his creation.
A
It's not, it's
dedication.
faith usually used by Christians is about you and me accepting the reality of a proposition, right? That God exists and that he loves me and that I need to repent for my sins and accept him as my savior, blah, 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 right? That's usually the Christian take, right?
He's saying it like if you say you're faithful to your spouse, you're not accepting that you have a spouse or that they exist. It's you're being faithful to your obligations to them.
I guess I was just trying to suss that, and that's why I included, I would say, my two definitions at the beginning. I would say there's a colloquial definition of faith in that, do you have faith in your bus driver? And it's like, well, I guess, I'm pretty confident in the dude or lass because they have been showed that they have good bus driving skills. I've been with them multiple times. They
Right.
got me out of a tough time. They knew how to even change a tire and all sorts of things. But I view that as different and almost like they're sometimes to try and equivocate. Is they're trying to like, well, you believe in confidence, don't you? But what they really mean is that I have this intuition of a higher being, whatever that is, that speaks to me and gives me a moral code. And
Right.
that is two very different things.
And that's the point, because imagine this. Imagine that it doesn't, the faith being talked about. Imagine if the narrative coming from Christians was the faith being talked about had nothing to do with whether you and I are convinced that the story is true. The faith being talked about is the faith that this man, who is also a God or God incarnate, has in us, right? And he dies, he suffers and dies and is resurrected, and he does that for us, right? So the faith that we're all saved by is his faith alone, right? It's not about whether or not you and I are convinced by the story or any of that other kind of stuff, right? It's just his faith, and then that seals the deal, that takes care of it. So it's a kind of universalist claim, right? Like you and I are saved, like you would have to accept a variety of different things. Like there's kind of this Christian story, right? It's wrapped up. Christianity is true. There's salvation. It's true. It applies to absolutely everybody planet wide, right? But no one actually has to believe it. No one has. It's not about whether or not you accept it. You don't have to follow it. You don't even have to acknowledge it. You can actually be a complete and total POS and still be saved, right? The
There are
faith in
And
question
universalists
so,
is
out
God's
there.
faith, not your faith.
and I understand, I think what you're trying to steelman about their position, I still have a problem with this type of faith because even in his, he does something empirical. He like sends a dude down
Sure.
to be born, kill him. Somehow the blood magic
Right.
lets our sins go, and then sends him back up into heaven.
To be fair, I don't think that I'm steel manning a Christian position. I think if there are any Christians that believe specifically what I'm describing, I would really like to hear from them, because I don't know that there are any that believe what I'm talking about. I just think if you look at the literature of the New Testament in juxtaposition to the Old Testament, you can talk about faith in this way and reach this conclusion, and it's consistent in a literary sense with what's going on. I don't know that there are any Christians out there that think this is okay, that think that this
Well,
is the case.
I would love to have Christians come on. They seem, like I said, to have run away. We were looking. I do see the lovely Da Freak out there. We're
Hey,
sending
Jeffrey.
love out
They use the
there.
excuse
But
that, oh, you're taking too long.
I know, and look, I understand we have a long housekeeping. We just can't help ourselves. It's both that I love our Patreons and then we get into it. I can't help it. There are some things, just like the 6,000-year-old claim, the fact that we have to deal with conspiracy theorists. There we go. Um, I just love everyone out there, though. And like I said, if you are a theist, feel free to come on and send us some love and tell us why you believe in faith. Why is faith an accurate measuring stick, a pathway to truth? Because I don't think it's any of those things. But okay. So do
And
you have? I was going to say, if you have one more point, and then if you want to wrap up on the subject, but the floor is still yours, Jefferson. We are calling me skeptical, talking about faith.
yeah, I would say that I think I basically agree with you on that point from a human perspective, from our perspective, because I don't really have any weight in the kind of metaphysical or Christian claims that I'm trying to make. I'm just trying to present an alternative to faith. But um, the notion of faith that I think is normally presented to Christian believers and atheists, I'm not convinced that it's an end all be all. I don't think that it really makes a lot of sense. I don't think it's a virtue. And one of the things that I find really disturbing about it, and I actually was in a conversation with some people on a different social media outlet, was they were telling me that I needed to repent and do all this kind of stuff. And when I asked them how, and they had no solution for me. I said, "Well, no. What do I need to do? You know, you're convinced that I've reached the wrong conclusions. Apparently, I need this faith and I need this conviction and I need it immediately. Otherwise, God's going to get me. What do I do? How do I get that?" They kicked me, and then this particular medium that I was on, I was able to hear them talk about it. Another Christian came out and was like, "I just don't understand why this guy was saying that. Like, doesn't he realize that he's supposed to weigh the evidence and then he's supposed to reach the right conclusion himself?" I was like, "Oh, that's
Well,
interesting. Like, that's not how the Holy Spirit works in the New Testament. So
yeah,
that's odd." So yeah, I mean, that kind of
it's a bit
stuff. Yeah,
backwards.
when it comes to that kind of thing, yeah, faith in a lot of ways, in a contemporary Christian sense, is completely corrupt. The way that faith is presented from Christians, I think, is decadent and corrupt. So
Woohoo! Well, thank you so very much,
Thanks for
Jefferson.
your views on that. Yeah.
And I agree. I mean, they need to go back to the drawing board. Like I was saying before, it's not
yes,
that James or I, and it sounds like yourself, are closed-minded. It's just that there hasn't been a version of faith that I have found useful for anything but the lay colloquial sense, as in, like, you got two buddies working with each other, and you don't want to be like, do you have faith in this hammer? And you really don't want to argue over something like that. But once it gets into the theological sense, I think it just gets silly.
yep.
Open for someone to create something new, though.
Oftentimes, yes. Yep.
Yeah. But thank you so very much, Jefferson. And all
Thanks,
right, I
Jefferson.
mean,
Go back to the drawing
we
board
are
for ourselves.
going back to the drawing board ourselves. We're sending love and then putting that link back up, as we are calling me skeptical on faith.
I mean, I think
Woohoo!
X music, I think it's a little, I mean, there are certain concepts in religion that are interesting, but it's not something I spend a lot of time thinking about on a daily basis. There are soteriology battles back and forth between the varying Christian factions. They're
And it would have to
incoherent.
be, it would have to be from them. You know, while I was doing research, speaking again about other religions, you know, Islam, a lot of Muslims say, hey, don't put me with such a simplistic Christian version of faith. We simply don't take things on blind faith. It's like, okay, that's fine, but I feels a little bit, to use that word as every episode, it feels politically correct. It just feels like, if you're telling me faith, blind faith, how about evidence? Because then you don't need
Well,
faith.
yeah. Well, I define blind faith as my definition of it is that it's not falsifiable. So if you have to ask them, is what could I do? What would falsify? Oh, I guess we lost Amy for a second. Her browser probably just crashed. But yeah, that's what I always say, is that if faith is not falsifiable, then it's blind faith, because there's nothing you could do to prove it wrong. So thanks, Jefferson. Yeah, then there's no point in even looking at anything, because you're just going to believe it no matter what. And that's blind
Exactly.
faith.
If your metric isn't something that can be verified by others, especially by people who disagree with you, then it is just your gut. And I mean, sometimes your gut has it over your brain. Uh, in a lot of naturalistic explanations, but when it comes to a lot of bigger questions, especially
Hello? Did we lose Amy again, or did you guys lose me? We lost Amy? Okay. I'm sure she'll be right. Yeah, Shane. So I define the difference between faith and blind faith as falsifiability. I think that if your faith is not falsifiable, then it's blind faith, because you're not willing to accept the possibility that it could be wrong. It's kind of like if you're going to still believe that your spouse is faithful despite you walking in on them with somebody else, then you're turning a blind eye to it. It's wishful thinking. So, yeah, looks like Amy's having some issues. But if anybody else wants to come on, we will certainly take at least one or two more callers if we get the anybody who wants to come on and tell us what faith means to you. I do think a lot of people do tend to look at faith as a virtue, and I think that it's kind of woven into our fabric, like I said, because most people are theists, and we identify with other people who are theists, and those of us who used to hold faith. I don't think as Matt Dillahunty says, he wasn't dumb when he was a believer. It wasn't that he was dumb. He's not smarter now. He just has a clearer way, a better way of looking at things and evaluating what's true and what's not true. Let's see. Fundamental problem with the discussion is that faith is a qualitative rather than a quantifiable. Unlike evidence, people keep asking how much when it comes to faith. Yeah, that's true. It's hard to quantify faith. It's a little faith, a lot of faith. It's hard to specifically define. Talk about evidence. That's another thing that's people will clash on, people will disagree on, but I think most people anyway are able to reach conclusions about strong versus weak evidence, except in this area, which a lot of people are biased on to their own predispositions. Welcome back, Amy.
Thank you so very much. I think Satan really wanted to get me to come sell timeshares in hell. But my last sentence was especially when it comes to life and death, humans start to get a little bit silly. And so that is where the bias comes in. That is when it's always good to have an empirical, verifiable system like science, which can help remove those biases. Shane, skepticism, you grant people that can find faith. What proposition?
Possible propositions. Possibly. They possibly could have blind faith in possible propositions.
And my thing with
yeah.
faith and blind faith is that it is. How they define it, I don't think there can be anything else but blind. Faith is blind. Faith is not a pathway. A pathway to truth. Unless this conference, I'm skeptical about this.
You wrote your roboting a little bit, Amy, or is it?
No, Shane's still roboting.
Roboting.
What was the last thing you heard? That's okay. We're sending love out there. We're about to get Mark Reid in. And yet, once again, it seems like the theists just don't want to defend their concepts. I don't know what it is. Is it because we give them too much time change? Should we kick and mute people?
Yeah. Amy's voice box is transitioning to her reptilian, true reptilian form. So.
Let me check down with my manager's thing.
Welcome on, Mark.
Hello. I'm not sure I want to be on the stream anymore. That's scary. That's so scary. Oh, wow.
All right. Made a deal with.
Oh, Amy.
That is much better.
You got your voice box back.
Woohoo! Yeah, I got a few points, or just a couple of quick points I want to make. I'll be really quick. I just wanted to jump on and sort of go. We're sort of. I've heard a lot of different definitions of faith, and I think we got to sort of lean out of the one in the Bible, because even Christians use definitions, wildly different definitions of faith, and you're pointed to the one in the Bible, which is sort of evidence of things unseen, or belief in things that are unseen. Some of them use it as we would use confidence or trust. That it's not really a what we'd categorize as sort of a blind faith, that they have evidence and they have confidence in that evidence. I've heard that told to me before. I don't necessarily think the evidence is strong, but that's the way they're using the word faith. And really that's, so really pinning down what they mean by faith, because I think that some people do use it as sort of a almost a blind faith. The thing about it too is that it doesn't really explain anything epistemologically. It doesn't explain why you believe what you believe. To me, it almost seems like a tautology. It's like, well, I believe it because I really believe it. Like I really, really strongly believe it. But I'm sure there's some people that would correct me on that. But I have this saying that I use about faith, and this is the point that I want to make, that faith doesn't necessarily prove or demonstrate that anything you believe is right. All it does is convince you that you can't be wrong. And I'm talking about the sort of, traditional, the faith that you described, the sort of the one that's sort of, I really believe because that's what I need to do. So yeah, that's really all the points I wanted to make. I didn't want to take long, but it's such a shame that
Thank you,
Perry
Mark.
couldn't come. Oh, no worries. I mean, I'm happy to
know,
discuss
I was
them.
excited.
But look, Perry was talking a big game in chat. I think he should come in, back up what he was saying, makes put us all in our place, and yeah.
He's probably back to one of his 18-hour Bible reading marathons. So
Well, look, if he's gone to take
us.
care of his children instead of leave them idly watching him rant in the background, I'm all for it. So yeah,
He'll have faith that God will take care of his children.
it's got something. Yeah, but I just think that yeah, faith is just this. It's very weird. It's not really a reason for believing anything. Like it's not. It's sort of just I do believe it. Well,
You would
yeah,
never.
but why?
You would never use faith if you had any possible better explanation for it.
Well, I think Matt Delahunt brought him up earlier, and he used to say that there's no position you can't justify on faith, and I think that's 100% true. You could justify that men are better than women, or women better than men, or that any position at all, and sort of people go, well, just because you have faith doesn't necessarily mean you're wrong. You could take it on faith that humans will eventually colonize Mars. You might not be wrong, but you might not be right either. It's not a very good methodology for sorting out what is true and what is not true. It's probably the worst methodology you could ever put into practice, because really you're just believing the consequence, or and then just rolling with that. It's a terrible way of determining what's true.
And all of
Watch
the religion.
Talk has faith in gravity, but I think there's a good reason we have faith in gravity.
Who has faith in gravity?
Squatch Talk, the guy in chat.
Oh, okay. I'm not reading chat.
Squatch Talk, yeah. He's
Well, I mean, I don't have faith in gravity. Well, it depends what you mean by faith. If you're talking about a confidence that is born of evidence that you see, then yeah, that if that's your definition of faith, then sure, we've got faith in things. But sort of the way that we're using faith is sort of a confidence and a belief in something without any evidence or any real justification for it. It's putting your sort of confidence in something with no other rationality behind it besides that you should put your confidence in something. And that's what we're talking about when we faith. So, faith is not what we believe in gravity. Why we believe in gravity.
We believe in it because of empirical evidence.
Yeah.
We see the force. We know that it exists. We don't understand why, but we do know that it's there.
If we believed in something, say a possible universe where alternative universe where something else happened, or if we believed in a teapot around Jupiter, just simply based upon we're gonna believe it because we want to, and there's no evidence for it, then yeah, that would be faith. But generally, from sort of a methodological naturalist position, we don't do that. Everything's sort of up in the air until you find a preponderance of evidence to kind of get you over the line. And at that point, calling it faith is a really bad sort of misrepresentation of the position that science is actually making.
Well, a lot of times they're just piggybacking God on the back of science.
Well,
let science do the work and throw God in at the end.
So, because Nick's not here, I'll bring up his favorite topic, Hume's problem of induction.
Thank you so much, Mark.
No worries. Well, you could say, because if Nick was here, he would say we all have kind of faith.
He absolutely would. Yeah.
He absolutely would. So I'm going to do it on his behalf and then argue against him because I'm dishonest and he's not here to defend himself. Well, it depends. I think that I make a distinction between presupposition and faith, but you could take faith to mean a presupposition as well, I think. I don't, but I guess you could define it that way.
And I just want to say, Walfie, I think it is, if you were hanging backstage, you were actually on deck. So I think you were a Christian.
Pop back on,
so
we'll
if
get
you want to come back on, we actually give priority to Theus here. But he might have had connection problems. But you were saying, Mark?
Yeah, tell us why Nick's wrong.
No, I think that Nick's definition of faith sort of differs slightly from. I think he would group in a presupposition into faith that I wouldn't do. I think the difference would be a presupposition is absolutely necessary to implement in order to make any coherent sense of the world. I'm possibly wrong on that. I think you could make an argument against it. But to be honest with you, a lot of it does come down to what you define as faith. If you think faith is just confidence in something without any evidence, then you have to take it on faith that induction works.
That other people have minds, or
Yeah, and I mean, if you want to say, I take it on faith that my senses are real for a valid level, a variable level of correctness, or a given level of correctness, then you could say that. I prefer to say it's a presupposition because it's necessary, but you could make an argument that I am taking it on faith, depending on your definition of faith.
Wishful thinking, yeah. Well, that's why Paul says it's the substance of things hoped for. It's what they want to be true. And since it's not falsifiable, they're just going to believe it because it makes them feel good, usually.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid, another valid definition of faith, and it is one that Christians, they do refer to. It is part of they want this to be true, so they have faith that it is. But again, I really want to hammer this home. When a Christian says faith, they may not be talking about that. They may be an evidentialist and be talking about the evidence they have, promoting a sense of overwhelming confidence in themselves. So
that's possible, but I think that would be in the minority, because I think even those who do present the evidentialist case would still come out and say you do have to have faith in God, because
that's true. That's true.
Even Ken Hovind will say, no, I can't absolutely prove God. I have to have faith in God, but you guys have faith too, because evolution's a religion, and but atheism's a religion.
Yeah.
And I know this because of 15-foot whale, and
I taught sex ed for 15 years in high school.
And once again, I am going to keep on sending that link out. We are looking for Theus to join us and to talk with us about faith, why it is a reliable pathway to truth. I am starting to think there are no theists out there that think it is a reliable pathway to truth, because, if they did, they would actually come on.
Well, that's really all I wanted to say. But thank you so much for letting me on. James.
Not only that, but I actually want to send a shout out. Where can we find you up and coming, Mark?
Oh, I'm on tomorrow, which is probably, I don't know, tomorrow night. Or tonight. I don't know what it is in your time. I'm on Praise I Am's channel debating morality with Smokey. And then the one day afterwards, I'm on Modern Day Debate debating Flat Earth with Jen as my partner.
Spicy.
Yeah, no, it's crazy because I went on to a sort of pre-debate sort of prep thing, and we got into an argument already. Yeah, with Jen. So it's basically
oh boy.
Oh, about the about apparently science is not provable, and it's all just speculation, and we don't understand the world, and Jen stuff.
She learned that in her past life.
I don't know where she learned it, but she's very adamant it's
her past
true.
Life, yeah.
Yeah, well, wherever she learned it.
The only thing she learned, she'll tell you, the only thing she learned in this life is physics. Everything else came to it from past lives.
Okay, I'll take your word for that. But yeah, so it might turn into like the flat earthers sitting aside while Jen and I argue each other, which would be hilarious, but probably not good for the show. So we'll have to see what happens. It will be El Spicy One. Definitely spicy one.
With it.
In the movie, the heroes come together at the end. It'll be okay.
Yeah. Is Jen a hero? Wait, am I a hero? I don't.
Super atheist.
There's the pro-science and the anti-science. It's not even political. There's people that follow what the consensus of the scientific community follow, and then there are people
total science Chad here. Yeah, absolutely.
If Jen doesn't think science works, how does she think the world is round? Where does she get that from if science isn't reliable?
Prammas, I think, which are
the spirit holder.
Well, sort of a Hinduist philosophical, sort of like a Neoplatonist kind of model, that you have these prammas which generate stuff. Balls are involved somewhere. I don't know. It's Jen, like
for maracas.
Oh,
yeah.
And we got.
I mean, it's awesome to make fun of Jen, but I'd really like to hear what Wolfie's got to say because
yeah.
But we are sending a love to you, Mark, because we heart you. You are awesome. You are going to do amazing tomorrow and in the next debate.
Smoke him out.
That's
smoke.
Get ready for the smoky stampede. Poke the smoke, baby. Yeah.
And all right.
I want to be a fly on the wall.
Can I use that in the debate? Can I use that in the debate, please?
He did say that out loud.
Nice. Nice.
But we would never make fun of any of our theist brothers and sisters out here.
You don't poke the smoke, Mark.
I'd love to poke the smoke.
But okay, we are
I've said enough.
Love.
The smoke would probably love you to poke him.
Oh my. See, now we're getting spicy, but we, with that, are now moving on to our fourth call. We're getting exciting of the time, and I think our first theist of the night. It is exciting as we move into Call Be Skeptical, Faith. What is up, Wolfie?
Good evening, Amy and whoever you are. I forgot your name. I've been on before.
James,
Do you remember me? It's Ralphie or Ralph.
Yes.
Ralph, how you doing?
How are you?
Good, I was just flying by and I saw you were having your skeptical studies, and I had to just pop on.
Woohoo! Well, welcome aboard. I hope you are having a fantastic night, and we are talking about faith. What are your thoughts?
I'm very curious about a couple of things, right? So, and I might have a, shall we say, a uncomfortable topic to compare it to, but let's go this way. If we believe in the rationality of skepticism, right, and we say, okay, we're skeptics, we are uncertain about anything until we believe in more scientific method or more methodological naturalism or more realism. Are you aware that first of all, that human beings are rational? as in scientifically we're not rational. And would you accept that there's a limit to rationalism, right? There's a limit of objectivism, because objectivism and rationalism is just experience plus reason, i.e. physics plus logic and maths. And therefore, there must be limits of such things. Would you agree? So I'll give you a simple example. So when I use the scientific method, starting with the Greeks, I get the atomist thinking there's 4 elements or 5. I go through a few centuries. After centuries, I get to alchemy. More centuries, I get to Newton's laws. More centuries, I get to black body experiments. But in every moment in time, those things you consider true were actually what we know to be completely false. So the last 300
We're getting
years,
closer to the truth.
well, you might be getting closer to the truth is a sort of a polite way of saying you actually are wrong, right? So would you agree that Newton's laws are completely wrong, right? We know atoms.
Not completely wrong. They work pretty well, but we did refine them and get closer to the truth, but we don't have the truth yet. We're not.
Yeah, so at every point that they're completely wrong, right? So we know, for example, the atom is not a physical, it's not a proton, electron, nucleus. Those are just manifestations of quantum mechanics. But quantum mechanics is manifestations of field theory. But we seem to call these things, or skeptics or the scientists, they call these things truths. But truth just means it fits into my epistemology, i.e. methodological verificationism, right? There's nothing more true than it just being, even though we know historically it's all been false, right? We know actually Newton's laws are completely wrong, right? They just work within parameters.
Well, they're not
Like stretch the parameters,
wrong.
they collapse, right? So if I put 2 clocks and I send them on the to the Mars rover, if I use Newtonian mechanics, it'd be completely wrong. Right?
But
I mean,
we also can. Oh, you can go.
The watch on your wrist or the watch on your phone is not nearly as accurate as an atomic clock. But you wouldn't say it's wrong. It's just not quite as precise as perhaps the most precise tool that we have.
Yeah, so my point being, at every point we get another clock. We get the hydrogen frequency atom vibration. At each point we say this is the best thing we have, and then we label it the truth. But really what we're saying is it's true until we know it's false.
See, but you're saying truth. I would say it's factual. It corresponds with reality. I would say Newton's physical laws still correspond with reality, even if they are superseded on the higher and the smaller scales.
Superseded is another polite way of saying replaced with something that was actually better or more right, but nevertheless false. Right?
You say that, but you don't. We don't hunt animals using general relativity. We don't drive cars using quantum mechanics.
Not yet, no. But they will be with quantum computing with self-driving cars at 300 miles per hour soon, right? So if I had to drive a car at 400 miles an hour, I can't use Newtonian mechanics.
There may be a quantum computer, but my point would be is that we live on the physical realm, and Newton's laws work, or on the classical Newtonian scales, and his physics works on that level.
Correct. I don't say it doesn't work, for example, just like I could drop and use even older maths and pre-Newtonian maths and physics, and it would crudely work. But the point I'm trying to say is it seems a strong claim made by the skeptics that therefore this thing is true, as opposed to faith, which is untrue.
Well, there's a principle called fallibilism, and that means that we don't have to have absolute certainty to say that we have knowledge. There are very few things we know with any absolute certainty. So all knowledge is provisional. You build knowledge upon knowledge, and it is subject to being undermined at some point. But it's typically not what happens. But we do leave the possibility open.
Which actually it's not only open, it's actually well understood in a kind of Kuhnian revolution where you throw out every ontology and go, okay, now we've got the black body experiment, which says, hey, 20, 30 years afterwards, we have quantum mechanics. 50 years later, we've closed everything except the gaps in the standard model. And we all know, good physicists know the standard model is going to go bye-bye. So,
nice change.
Right? So at some point, we know that everything we think we as emotional primates are calling reason, these emotional primates are attached for some emotional, political, philosophical position to be deemed, labeled the truth or the best thing we know right now, the best thing in physics, is actually historically shown never to be actually true. In fact, it's got a perfect track record of never being true. On the other hand, when you look at that position, go, I'm going to use the same method
pause you for a second, because science it's not looking for the truth. It's almost like
Thank
a
you.
bunch of people trying to prove each other wrong, and you go and look for evidence, and you're kind of driven to positions, almost forced by the data.
Yeah, so all I'm trying to say is that, and I appreciate that. So all I'm trying to say is, so therefore, given we have this, shall we call it this perpetual uncertainty, for which I will use by being skeptical, by being a verificationist, by believing in methodological naturalism, and then I use the science of the gaps as my kind of beacon, and the science of the gaps just tells me, hey, the gap I have in my knowledge right now, until the next time I have a Kuhnian revolution, is going to be something that I'm going to be absolutist and dogmatic about. I'm going to say a scientific method is the thing that allows me to traverse the science of the gaps from here to there. And I'm going to think this thing is special as primacy because it worked, because it gave me utilitarianism or engineering. But it never answers the questions that matter to primates, right? Why do we love? Why do we do anything of the higher order values for a social primate?
Evolution.
I could explain, I think, why we love. I think that we love because we are social creatures that are emotional, that there is an advantageous side to an altruistic bonding of love.
Look out for each other, care for each other.
Exactly. I think you could explain love in a very naturalistic sense without losing what makes love so fantastic. I know sometimes people feel that if we explain it away in a sort of physical, chemical sense, that it makes it less special. I don't know what the less fabulous, but I don't think so.
Maybe less meaningful, right? So if I look at meaning as being the final interface between some understanding of knowledge and the value it would provide to us, right? I can't imagine a day where I'm going to get a biochemical description of the entire system of the body that generates what, in quotes, I call love, that would provide any meaning to me when I feel either the love of my dog or the love of my child. Can you imagine where I go, okay, my child loves me, or Pooch has come up and Pooch has decided to nuzzle himself against me, and I turn to page 1782b of the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, and it tells me what that feeling was. Can you imagine that there would be a descriptor on a page in the Stanford Encyclopedia that says, this is why Pooch loves me and this is why I love Pooch?
See, but don't you think there are good naturalistic reasons to why you would love your dog and why your dog would love you, and to why that branch specifically, why cats, dogs, why I'm in love of carnivora? There's a reason, and it's because we see, I think, a lot of ourselves in them. They are very smart.
Mutually beneficial
It's
relationship.
mutually beneficial in that we get going back to love. We actually have there are fur babies, and I think that it's a symbiotic relationship.
But my point again remains, though, is would there be a descriptor on a piece of paper that would provide meaning to you? Let's say I could précis all the equations.
Can I? There are a few questions, and I would say those answers that are part of this will sound mean. There are a few things I think are part of being or becoming an adult. One of those things is acknowledging death. I think acknowledging that we are mortal and that we only have a finite being. I also think acknowledging that there is no higher meaning than, I would say, to eat. That seems to be our bodies. Yeah. And that is both you could say that's a curse or a blessing. You really could, in my opinion, take that any
might
way
not
you
make you
want
feel
to.
warm inside. It might not make you inspire you.
Nonetheless, I think it is true. Going back
Well,
to
I take the opposite view because I am a dogmatic absolutist, and I believe that the foundations of my knowledge come from God, and therefore all of this tinkering.
But how did you come to that conclusion? How did you come that you should base your knowledge on God?
Absolute faith in my existence as a metaphysical creature. I believe I am spirit,
there's
and
evidence
soul
that I'm
in a human form.
Well,
So I start
you
with
do
that
exist, but where do you get to the metaphysics?
I start with the axiomatic assertion that the universe is the unfolding of God's revelation to us, right?
Are you a presuppositional
Sounds like he's
apologist?
a
You're going to make me
presuppositional.
excited. That is fantastic.
No, presups are just
Hey, Mubarak.
presups are just different kind of sort of ways of people performing apologetics or polemics. I'm more interested in deeper foundational principles.
It
I believe
almost
the
sounds
universe-
like a slur at this point. I know that it.
Well, I know people like to
gets
say
into-
presups are slurs, or we like to say the science of the gaffes is a slur, and those things are all just petty. The deep understanding is, no, I believe I am a creature that is experiencing God's revelation, and the scientific method is just a way to understand that revelation deeper. And the deeper you go into that revelation, the more you're going to know that the universe was revealed to us by Him.
Can you give me an example of that revelation?
Every experience in my life.
Oh, come on. You know that is
I'm a
basically
spirit
the
floating
cheating
through
thing.
time, Amy. I float through my day in the most magnificent way, right?
But pick the most revelating revelation.
The holiest of them all.
The holiest of the holy.
Oh, absolutely. Just as I walk with the missus of the dogs through the beautiful forest and the lakes just beside me in Berlin, I feel every breath of air I take and everything that's experiencing their skin, my tingling, absolutely every physical experience is just a interface to that physical. I'm a permanent spirit. I am your spirit animal, Amy.
Thank you. I thought Tiger King was, right?
I literally believe that. I believe that everything is literally. So when I look at the universe, I look at the sky, I look at the stars. I don't look at this as some computation that needs to be effectively describable or something I know, because I know from enough maths and physics to know it's
In
all wrong.
non-believer communities, though, once again, not to be offensive, but this
No,
argument
it's fine.
normally gets labeled under, look at the trees.
Absolutely.
Look at the sewers. Look at the slums of Mumbai. Look at the cancer wards.
Absolutely, it's amazing to see the good and the evil and the suffering, and we could do all the theological arguments, etc., and compatibilism. You can do all this stuff, but it doesn't change my fundamental experience. And we know from the best knowledge currently in brain studies that even reason, I'm not sure if you chaps know this, is 4 layers deep down inside brain chemistry, right? We know that as a biological creature, as a primate, as you rightfully say, a socialized primate, we first operate on our outer cortex by inference. Then it builds up intuitions. Those intuitions are intuitions about representations. And then and only then does the reason part kick in. So when you put reason as rationality as being having primacy, that's actually not even what the brain does. So if
the brain has to wire itself.
I would say we are often accused of trying to make evolution as a morality. And I would say that we have a lot of biases, including a bias towards, I call it brain bias. I think we're biased towards consciousness. I think we anthropomorphize everything that we want to, even though a lot of life doesn't seem to need it. But
it's good that we like it.
We like it. And not only that, but see, when I listen to how amazing it is that when we're walking through and we're feeling everything, there are good naturalistic reasons to why you enjoy a healthy walk along the road with your dog. And then you come across pure, looking water, and it looks fantastic to you. There are good reasons to why the opposite could also be true. If you lost your dog and broke your foot and fell into a swamp. And so it's easy instead to imagine a spectrum in which consciousness has to be around so we can walk back on those Newtonian physical laws, instead of that there was a creator that actually wanted us very, very, very specifically around.
Absolutely, because again, I think you mentioned the word reason 3 times. Therefore, you keep looking for a reason, or there might be a good reason to reason away. But reason is foundationally limited, right? So if you look at the deepest understanding, or the latest understanding we have of the brain and the universe, we know that Hameroff and Penrose have not, because they're getting close and close to cracking ORC. We know that Deutsch and Charletto is close and close to cracking constructed theory. But what we do know is that consciousness is not a computation. There's never going to be a description of our consciousness that would be amenable to a description in maths and logic. So when you say reason,
I don't know
is the
about that.
process. Well, that's already been proven by Penrose.
Well, I would say, I just want to separate this. I think we can't just reduce the brain or the mind to computation. Nonetheless, I believe that it will one day be replicated naturally. I believe consciousness, along with sentience.
Well, that might be a postulate that you could do in the future, but what we do know theoretically, as in proven theorems, is that consciousness is not going to be a computation, right? Not in any universe or Turing machine. So we know when we have a description of this thing called the hard problem of consciousness, we already know that it is not going to be described like the way I would describe Schrodinger's equation or Newton's law of gravitation. So it's description itself. And so what is reason? Reason is taking descriptors, symbols, and manipulating.
But can I also just throw in here, because a lot of creationists and theists don't like this fact, one of the reasons why I don't think we can ever be just information processing has to deal with how chemical we are, that we are basically just stewing in these chemicals, and that we sometimes do things that are irrational for unintelligent reasons, but they make sense if you look at it because of someone, well, they got really mad and so they punched the wall. Was that the intelligent thing to do? No. Can we understand why they did that, though? Probably.
There's competing forces where there are times where you would need that quick burst of anger or to get you out of a situation. It might not always be appropriate or good, but it does have a function in the evolutionary context.
Oh, I'm no problem with let's say, emotionally based impulses and erratic behavior, but nevertheless, again, you're still trying to reason about them and provide rational descriptions. When I'm telling you that it's fundamental.
Yeah, we kind of get stuck
we don't
with
have a rational description of consciousness, are we?
I'm going to read a comment in a second, but I want to know then, because we're coming from I would say an empiricist mindset more than just, or I would say it is rational that we are looking for empirical evidence, but what are you then offering in return? What are you saying gets us around this problem that you say exists?
Oh, that's okay. So from the positive claim on the other side is I believe as a metaphysical creature, as I've tried to assert my absolute dogmatism, is that God has given within us, deeply embedded within the universe, within the material matter, and therefore within our consciousness, has given us a way to direct our existence towards Him. In the Christian faith, we call this alignment with goodness. And this order, implicit within us, implicit within the universe, is if you like, the metaphysical boundary that is calling us to our exploration in maths and physics and computing. The more we understand this, the closer we're looking to this order that has existed and transcended across time.
But if I could just, so it
calling
sounds
us.
like you are replacing being rational with consciousness. Is that I know because of somewhere embedded within my consciousness down to the tingles of my bones that God gives this to me. I don't, but I don't understand how that is, how that would really be different. How is that any different? It just seems like you're trying to say that my bias is better than your bias. Maybe not in those exact words, but why would this consciousness embedded in us be any better than actually trying to take a rational approach? Don't you think most of the time when we go about life, we want to take a rational discourse and approach?
No, because again, the presupposition, because you're being a presuppositionist, your presupposition is the primacy of reason and rationality. The presup you're invoking is the principle of sufficient reason, if you like. You're presupposing that reason and rationality is the lingua franca of the description that gives you meaning. So for someone who is a theist, clearly, the presupposition isn't rationality. So let's take simple examples. The brain has what, 86, 87 billion neurons? I'm a computer scientist. If I drew the total superset of all possible states of a human brain, i.e. all possible things you, as a materialist, you could ever think. If I multiply that by 80 years for your lifetime of Amy, all the thoughts Amy could possibly have thought. She only thought one of those thoughts as she lived her life or experience. They're limited. Your human biology limits the outer topological set of possible rationalities you could ever use. You're saying, as a presuppositionalist, you're claiming that my presupposition is my reason, my experience, and the thing I would perform as an exegesis, if you like, of my reason. And I put the scientific method, and we all get together as primates, and we perform this personal exegesis of rationality. And in it, we create this big mesh called mere scientific theories, despite the fact that they're constantly wrong, ontologically subsumed, if I'm not being harsh. And you're saying that this thing should be the thing because it succeeded in giving us the Industrial Revolution or something, that it is the way in which we get closer to the ultimate universe. I'm saying I can't believe why that's the case. You'd have to convince me why I should give up.
Well, I would
position.
I would say James and I, and generally all of us, have two presuppositions. I believe you have a third. I believe you have one more. I'll tell you what those two presuppositions are. Is I think, therefore I am, and the laws of logic. I think those two things you need to presuppose in order to buy something at 7-Eleven. I think the theists, creationists, whoever presupposes a God, I believe you are adding on an extra consciousness that we do not have any evidence for. And I'll let you answer, but then we do have people tagging me for questions, so I'll
not at all. I think even the construct of your answer there, I appreciate why you took at least you're honest about your presuppositional positions, which is good. Honesty is part of the Christian way. And those two presups you used were, hey, as long as I have the experience of first I can use that for logical induction from the I think therefore I exist epistemic method. And therefore you're saying that's sufficient for me to mount the rational case for the construction of verificationism. And then you're adding God because you're bolting on God to my worldview. And I'm saying no. I'm saying your worldview is actually malformed and maloriented. You're putting reason and rationality first, despite me giving you examples of examples why reason is limited. Reason isn't real.
It's the best thing that we have.
And the examples you have don't seem to be a counter to rationality. You go to this consciousness, but can I just give you a simple dichotomy and you tell me which you would rather prescribe to? My beliefs are rational. My beliefs are irrational.
Okay, once more, Amy. So I just had to do one thing. The last bit again.
So I just want to know which one you would rather prescribe to as a view. My views are rational, or my views are irrational.
I believe your views are rational.
Well, no, thank you, but no, I meant that statement in general.
Oh, okay.
So which statement do you think? I mean, you kind of answered my question.
Oh, why?
Which
You mean how would I
do you
apply it
think
to
is
myself, Amy?
well, which statement do you think I'm trying to think is a better statement? If we're just talking about beliefs, do you want
In that
you think
dichotomy,
your
then,
beliefs, my beliefs, should they
in that
be
dichotomy, I would
rational
believe.
or should they be irrational?
I believe I could argue both cases, but I don't accept the dichotomy. I would say I could argue the case equally that being rational is better, and I could argue the case equally being irrational is better, right?
Oh, come on.
No, let me give you an example.
Okay.
If you look at things you do like, art, music, all the creative endeavors of man, none of them are described by artists in their own expression as rational.
See,
The
but
best
I
piece of
wouldn't-
music, the best piece of experience, that final rendition I saw in the Berlin Opera, nothing reason about it. It was a very irrational thing. It was not. On the other hand, if I want to go to, I had to see the doctor yesterday. I want to make sure my doctor went to Johns Hopkins and was very rational. So both rationality and irrationality, but I would say that your dichotomy is failing because its presupposition within the dichotomy is the primacy of rationality once more. As opposed to asking, let me throw it this way: would you like a metaphysical existence or a physical only existence?
Well, I would say, would you want a metaphysical existence or a non-metaphysical existence?
Correct.
Would be the true dichotomy.
Sure.
I don't believe in a metaphysical existence, so I already think that this existence is the non-metaphysical existence. So I think I can answer that, and I know you want to answer, but you actually generated, and I may have to go through. But
questions.
Love, that's right. Keep on sending.
These damn skeptics being skeptical with their questions. What's wrong with you?
Randolph Richardson says, but is bias better than pious?
Absolutely not. Piety would be considered as an equivalent hierarchy of reason and rationality. The more pious I am, the closer I am to the goodness in the world. As in, the more rational I am, the less erratic I am, right? So absolutely pious is better than bias, but it's a funny question.
And okay, Shane's calling you out. We got the spice. What's the difference between, what would be the difference between you and a pre-supper if you had
pre-subs are like vegans compared to people like me. They're weak. They're making pre-subs. I'm an absolutist. There's no presuppositions. It's axiomatic.
We did have a
pre-subs are like vegan absolutists, right? Like absolutism light.
I'm trying to think. I think Brian Stevens had a thing about absolutism, but I'll have to go and find it. In the meantime, James, did you want to say anything?
No, I think I think I'm good.
Okay.
You're trying to argue with somebody who's saying you can't use reason and logic. I mean, that's
I love reason and logic.
You can't rely on it.
Oh, you can, but I'm just pointing out the. So, I mean, for example, do you understand what the limits of reason are? If you're into reason and logic, do you know what logic is limited by? Do you know things you can't do with logic?
They're not absolute perfect tools, but they're the best things that we have.
No, it's actually just simpler than that. It's deeper than that. I'm not going to use magic or anything. No, we know from Gödel's theorem what the limitations of propositional proofs are, and then we know from Turing what could be decidable, non-decidable, or computable, non-computable. So reason itself is an exploratory tool with mathematically and computer science-based limits. So fundamentally, reason is like a little tool in a box. It's got all these things in it, but it isn't capable of exploring everything because of reason itself. Implicit in the mathematics and science of reason is the limitation of reason. So therefore, when you say reason is an important thing, you say, I don't want to argue against you with reason. Absolutely not. I wish to use reason. I use reason all the time. It's part of my profession. I'm a professional reasoner. I'm a computer scientist, right? I've got no problem with reason, but what I do have a problem with is people don't understand the limits of reason. So I suggest a great book called The Limits of Reason.
I think the problem is that you have your beliefs in God and you can't justify it with reason, so you kind of take a hit against reason because it doesn't have there's no reason to think that your God exists, but you really like him. You really like the idea that he exists.
Yeah, but reason, it's not because I have a problem with reason. Like I say, I'm a devotee of reason. I wrote my first compiler when I was 11 years old, 12 years old. So obviously I love reason, because I wouldn't be writing compilers at that age if I wasn't into reason and logic. I have no problem with
But you
reason.
don't get to God through that way.
But I think you have a problem with that, saying that reason is capable of solving everything, or being able to be a tool that can shine the light upon. I'm going to give you strong examples of where we're limited in science.
And
Constructive
then I got
theory.
another question for you.
Yeah, done.
Oh, okay. Brian Stevens asked, can he be specific and explain to us, beyond expecting that a God exists, why we should believe in the Christian God?
The
Thank you,
benefits of
Brian.
why we should believe in a God is, first of all, you're going to get a worldview that is absolute and therefore will provide you with a stability and a purpose that will be hard to match. And secondly, embedded in the second or third level of our understanding of the Christian God is a trajectory for goodness. You will live a better life, a good life. You will be a healthier person. You will be a wealthier person, wealthier both in the spirit and the flesh. And you will find in your love, you will sleep better at night. When you pray at night and go to bed, you won't be tossing, you won't be tossing and turning, particularly tossing a lot before you go to bed, because you'll be wrestling, right? It doesn't happen.
Unless you believe you are going to hell, in which case you are going to be tossing.
In which case you'll be tossing vigorously, so to speak, right? But nevertheless, you will be nevertheless you will have a get out of jail card, which is part of salvation, right?
Well, I mean, I almost agree with you at that point, but I don't
Depends
think
on
that's fair. Is that a
soteriology.
fair? A get out of jail free? Basically, you could be a rapist, a murderer. You could be the worst piece of trash in the world, and then you just gotta. And I know. I always say, you just gotta come to Jesus, and then the first apologetic or just counterpoint I get is normally, well, they have to mean it. Well, okay, the rapist really meant it, and yet still gets into heaven.
I think that's because of liberal democracies, Amy. If we had a proper Christian society, the rapists would be dealt with properly, and you know that. But we won't go there, right?
Oh no, you know, we were actually talking about that earlier. I disagree. I think it reminds me of almost apocalyptic. We're watching Walking Dead kind of stuff. I really don't think if we were like do the old style, shoot people in the head because they stole a loaf of bread. I mean, I hear arguments from people. They're like, well, it'll scare the shit out of them, and therefore they won't do the crimes anymore. I really don't think that works. I think, not to get too far, but we were actually talking about that. Maybe we should bring
It came up a little bit,
Theus back on, because Brian Stevens actually has another question. Could he come to conclusions for us here without using reason? I'd like to see this.
I know we can't, because I'm a computer scientist, so we know all reasons will be the manipulation of symbols, be it the laws of logic or arithmetic or language. So because a universal computing machine can subsume all three, reason would just be the vocabulary of exchange. So good question again by Brian, who's clearly on his path to becoming a Christian, one could hope. Is no reason I'm not claiming is wrong or erroneous. I'm claiming it's insufficient.
Oh, Randolph Richardson coming after you, saying, yep, he said that in a fully Christian society, rape would probably be dealt with. That means forcing victims to marry their rapist, which is totally not proper.
Executing rape victims in the city because, hey, if they really didn't want to be raped, they would have just screamed and they would have been rescued. So if they didn't scream, they must have wanted it, right?
Well, we could talk about the pragmatic. I think Randall Richardson, is that the really nice, pleasant? Is he the Canadian chap? I think, right? The Canadian.
He is.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, he seems like
the Godfather of atheism.
Oh, he seems like a terribly pleasant chap. He's just a lost man. So, Mr. Richardson, no, because the totally capitalized not proper. I'm not sure what you mean, totally not proper. No, I believe healthy male-female relationships should be enforced by a Christian good. So, for example, it wouldn't just be rape. If a man got a woman pregnant and decided to run away and leave her with a child, I believe in a society in which he would have Christian patriarchy imposing in the most humane fashion his responsibility for him if he were to renege on his his responsibility. So someone knocked up a woman at 20, decided to just wander off and not support that child and bring him up, then a Christian patriarchy would apply moral
I like how
moral strength
you
to them,
say the quiet thing out loud. You're just like a Christian patriarchy.
Absolutely. The patriarchy is the best. Christian patriarchy is a
Lordy.
fantastic way to order the world, right?
Hey, this is the podcast daily slogan to say egalitarianism, time to love everyone. Though that makes me just think of
But that's another thing. I think when I first came on your show a few, was it 3 or 4 months ago, Amy, I think the reason I was doing a poll of the skeptic channels, and a lot of them they got their knickers in a twist, so to speak, because they kept talking about love and the asymmetry of love, which of course is amusing to us Christians because that's our second most important tenet. And when you look at it,
I love
how much love do you show for the Christians or the Muslims? And I think Amy was the first one to respond positively. Lots of other skeptical channels booted me and some of my mates off because they're like, well, we don't hate Muslims and Christians. We're just going to mock them and deride them and laugh at them and devalue them. And I kept asking the question, if I replace Christian with black, Jew, woman, transgender, no one was like that, right?
Well, we just want to continue saying that we love everyone out there, whether you are atheist or theist, liberal or conservative. We heart you all. And all right, Ralph, I think we are about to wrap it up. So
I'm going to check. Thanks for having me on,
Amy.
You guys have a good show.
Thank you for behaving yourself.
Thank you so
mostly.
And we're just glad a theist came on. Okay, that is what we like to hear tonight.
Peace out, people.
No, he didn't, Randolph. But you kind of expected that, didn't you, Randolph? You knew that one was coming.
With that, we are going to wrap it up here on an episode of Call Me Skeptical Faith. I think that went pretty well. Woo! What is up, Gizmo?
He thinks so, too.
Mark, did I not ask your question? Now I feel bad. I might have missed. I started going up. It deletes questions after a while, though it probably was my fault. Here I am blaming StreamYard. It was
pulled the thing down with his tail.
But we're sending love to everyone out there. We will actually be going to an after show in Discord. So if you would like to have more burning desire questions, might be able to head over there. But we are sending love. And James, any final thoughts before we close up and head out?
No, thanks for coming on, guys, and watching us have these nice conversations with everybody. Thanks to the participants for coming in, and we'll see y'all soon. We love you guys.
Woo-hoo. That's right. We are sending lots of love into the internet sphere, and I also hope you all had a fun time on this episode of Call Me Skeptical Faith, where tonight we opened up the internet phone lines. Hashtag faith is bullshit. We opened up the internet phone lines to see if someone could help us understand why they thought faith is a possible pathway to truth. And I hope we all had some fun worth getting on your knees. I want to thank my co-host, James W., along with our guest, Soldier of Science, Jefferson Spatchcock, Mark Reid, and Ralph, along with the people in chat.
Good luck tomorrow in that debate, Mark. Smoke him out.
Good luck. Tonight, I will be watching and looking forward to it, but I know we have seen, and I actually, speaking of which, Mark Debates just spoke with Biblical FTW, and we are in the final stage. James and I are just going to pick out a date. Mark has all the debates, so go check out him on Praise I Am That
all
I Am.
Your debates are.
Go check him out on Modern Day Debate, and then go check him out soon right here on Debate Me Brah on this channel.
Hey, Robert.
All right. What's up, Robert? We want to send love to all the people in chat, our awesome mods who make this stream so great, and lovely viewers like you who make this channel even possible. If you're feeling fancy, please don't forget to like, follow, or subscribe, then hit that bell icon to all so you can join our live streams. Woo! Or hey, leave a comment once the video's done. After the show, we will be heading over to the Skeptic and Ranting Discord server, the link of which is in the description below. Lastly, if you'd like to help us make even more content, we offer some perks for our supporters by checking out our Patreon at patreon.com/Amy Newman. I am Amy Newman, and we will see you all on the next episode of Skeptic Ball Z. Good night, everyone.
Good night, guys. Lead us in prayer, Amy.
May his noodly appendage touch you, and may it be dipped in beer and bacon.
How long is that noodle?
Man, well, I would say it's about a 15-foot long whale's